As we move forward in this journey today, we're going to talk about some fun stuff. But I do want to continue to encourage you. If you have not begun this journey, we gave you 3 action steps in the first week. And action step number 1 was to have a household budget. If you haven't done that yet, I cannot stress to you enough the importance of being a doer of the word and not just a hearer only. And so I want to encourage you to make sure that you do that. Also, the next step is to get some space between you and life, because life happens. Anybody ever experience life happening? Stuff that was unexpected, things you weren't planning on that showed up. And so life happens. We live in a fallen world. Things break, things happen. So we want to put some space between us and life. And that's where that $1,000 emergency fund comes in. That may be a challenge to you. And even today, Shaun will even give us a couple scenarios of how we can get that quickly. But we've brought up some different things. In my case, well, actually, I'll talk more about it next week, what we did, some of the things that we've done. But I just want to encourage you, again, if you start doing things God's way, you get God's results. God will show up. God, that's the great thing about it. You can do so much, but you plus God, it's an amazing thing. But you've got to open that door. You've got to begin to pursue that. And then we also talked about the most important way to get God on the scene, and that is to honor him with his tithe. That when you bring the tithe into the storehouse, that immediately flips the stage so that money is no longer over your life as the Lord of your life, but you put God over your money. And God becomes the source and supply and the controller of your life. And so therefore, your God loves you, cares for you. And when you get money in the right place, money is submissive. But when it's in the wrong place, it's an unruly master. And it can be a hard taskmaster, as many of you know. I know in our Connect forms, often one of the most, it is actually the most checked box on our Connect forms is I struggle with finance, which is why we're doing this particular series. We have 1 week left that we'll finish up with next week. But I'm telling you, if we can start doing things God's way, we can start finding peace in that area. It doesn't have to be a struggle and fearsome, but we can truly walk in peace. And so I want to encourage you, again, those important steps to get going. Today we're going to be talking about savings and investment. Some of you might feel like, man, that's light years away. But you've got to start doing something so that you can enjoy the benefits of this. And so we're encouraged today. So I say that because I realize, we teach these things a week at a time, and really once you kind of get that space between you and life and you have a budget made, the next step is to work through your debt and work that debt snowball that we talked about last week. And then we can move toward the joy of really savings and investment. I will talk to you next week and kind of pull this together. But I realize that when we talk about this week after week, it's almost like, well, what am I supposed to be here now? And we realize that it takes some time. It can take a couple years, a few years to work through that debt snowball, depending on how deeply in debt you are. But as you're working through that, God's showing up. He can accelerate that. But the important thing is as it's being addressed, peace starts to come. And we stop walking in this fearsome, overwhelming feeling when we're getting ahead of it and it's not controlling us anymore. Amen? So with that, I'm going to introduce our good friend, Shaun Krick, to be with you. You may know him as the lead guitarist around here, but he is a numbers guy. He is a CPA, and Shaun has been with us from the beginning. He was with us when this church was a church of 8. And has been with us ever since. He was the 9th, and so we're excited to have him now being in this position to really help us this way. And so we're encouraged. Thank you, Shaun, for being here, and God bless you. Bring us a good one.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, so like Pastor said, I am a numbers guy. I like numbers, and so when I was approached about doing this, I got really excited because savings is about numbers, right? All right. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with the number 23. Number 23, that's the age I was back in 2003. All right, I just graduated from Michigan State University with my master's degree in public accounting. So, numbers guy. I earned my CPA license. Again, numbers guy. I was on top of the world. I landed a job with a public accounting firm. They were paying me $48,000 a year. I was very happy about that. So what does a guy fresh out of college with, first paycheck in his pocket need? A car. So I went out and I bought a car. Let me tweak that a little bit. I financed a car. I bought an Audi A4 for $425 a month payment. All right, my new job was down in Southfield, and so I had to get myself a nice snazzy place, my bachelor pad. So $650 a month my budget was going to go there. After that, you needed to furnish it, right? You needed couches and things to sit on, so I rushed to Art Van because the sales don't last very long there. And so, $130 a month worth of furniture. And what's a bachelor pad without a TV and a sound system? $220 a month on top of that. But I had everything. Did I mention I was also paying about $150 a month in credit card bills that I'd racked up throughout college on money not spent very wisely? And did you know they make you pay back your student loans? 6 months after you graduate, that clicks in, and you got to start making that payment, $300 a month. On top of all that, I was living a lifestyle, too, where I was going out every weekend, hanging out with friends. I was eating lunch out every single day, and it was, pretty bleak. If you could, throw up that first slide real quick. This is an actual budget I put together. I'm not making this up for this sermon or anything else. This is something that I, a CPA, somebody that has an education in numbers and a background therein, thought was good. To leave myself with $20 a month between me and life. I was basically betting life wasn't going to get me. You'll also see that I had a whopping savings balance of $0 and was contributing the massive amount of $0 towards my retirement. Now, I'm happy to say that, however many years this is later, that this is completely changed. You'll notice the tithe isn't in there. When I figured that one out, that's when things really started moving for me. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead only to plenty, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." With this lifestyle, I was pedal to the metal, speeding down a highway, straight into poverty, even though I was making a pretty good living. It was a sad position to be in. A wake-up call of mine came in 2 stages, and I was really fortunate to have it. The first one was I was out in Boston. I was at a concert, and I was buying myself a drink, and I swiped the card, and it got declined. And I said, uh-oh. And so I called up my credit card company real quick and was like, hey, can you guys, increase that limit a little bit? And they're like, sure, we can do that. I'm like, awesome. All right, so the party continues. I was able to eat the rest of the weekend, and I was actually able to get my car out of parking at Detroit Airport. All right, second wake-up call. And this might not seem like a big thing to you guys, but it was for me. So even though I'd bought stuff for my apartment, I hadn't really bought blankets because it was summertime. Well, I needed a blanket because winter's cold. And I went to go buy that blanket, swiped the card, and it got declined. This time, though, there was no credit increase that they would allow me, and I still had $0 in savings. So I didn't have a blanket. That was kind of a bummer. I tell you all this to highlight what not to do. Right? This is a non-sustainable pathway. Dave Ramsey, he has a saying that says, you can't out-earn stupid. And I was proving that month over month. God also has a saying. Proverbs 17:16, he says, of what use is money in the hands of a fool, since he has no intention of acquiring wisdom? And until that tithing concept really hit home for me, I was living in such a foolish lifestyle, and it's there in black and white. So today we're here to talk about savings, and you might be thinking to yourself, whoa, who are you to talk about savings? You said you didn't have any. But things have turned around. Like I said, it took me 10 years to dig out of this hole. I'll let you know. So this wasn't the only hole I had. There were other things in life that happened and came in, and other debts and things like that snowballed on top of it. But by using that debt snowball that Josh talked about last week, I was able to slowly but surely dig myself out. So there's hope. And so I come to you in a heart of compassion and empathy because I've been there. To save, if I asked you what saving is, most of you are probably going to say something along the lines of it's to take something and put it aside for future use. And that's right. But that's only part of the definition. If you look at what to save actually means, it also conjures up this thought of to preserve or to avoid the need to use or spend resources. So stewardship, something that God calls us to do. And I was failing miserably. Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord." Therefore, we all have this responsibility of stewardship over the thing God puts in our lives, including our income and our savings. So, my hope is to use some of these pitfalls that I fell into to give you an example of how you can save and think about the future and also plan for retirement. So, let's talk about some of the tools that we have at our disposal to actually save. The first thing that I want to bring up, and I cannot hit this home hard enough, is that your income is your biggest tool in generating wealth. If you're currently using your income to pay down debt, you're missing out on an opportunity. I don't say that to be condemning or anything else, because like I said, I've been there, but you're missing an opportunity to actually build wealth. 75% of the 400 richest people interviewed by Forbes said the key to getting wealthy is to get out of debt, stay out of debt. Pretty simple. But it's not. It can be very difficult. But like Josh hit home last week, we can do this. God will help. All right. So some of the common tools that people use to save money. The first one is a savings account. Most people probably have one. Saving account is a federally insured deposit account. So you put money in it. You can't write a check from it. But it is liquid, as we say. It is cash in the bank. Savings accounts earn a whopping average of 0.09% interest. So you're not going to get very wealthy investing in savings accounts, but they're safe. Okay? You can be reasonably assured that if you put your money into a savings account, you can get your money out of a savings account. Pretty similar is a CD, or a certificate of deposit. These are just like a savings account in that they are federally insured. They are liquid. You can get your money out. But the downside is that there's generally a minimum that you have to deposit between $500 and $1,000. And in order to get the increased benefit of 0.64% on average savings, you have to keep your money in there for at least a year. So, while you can take your money out earlier, you forfeit any earnings that you might have had in interest if you pull it up for that contract amount. And you might also have to pay a penalty depending on the agreement. All right, money market accounts. Money market accounts are also kind of like savings accounts where it's a depository account held at a financial institution. Money market accounts, you can write a check from them, and so they are more liquid, we would call that, than a savings account. And they earn 2 to 2.4% interest. So that's a pretty decent amount if you want something for a short-term place to park money in. Downside of a money market account is that you have to deposit a minimum balance, typically in the $10,000 to $25,000 range, and maintain that balance as well. Otherwise, you lose all of that increased interest savings potential. All right, still with me? These are some of the more vanilla ways that people can save, and we'll go through like when you use them in like the long-term, mid-term, or short-term process. But those are all vanilla. So CDs, savings accounts, and money market accounts, you can think of them as money in the bank because it literally is just cash in the bank. The next thing we're going to talk about fits under this umbrella called securities. And that a security is basically when you take money and convert it into something else. And when you do that, you start introducing this concept of risk. There's multiple types of financial risks that are out there. A couple of the common ones are market risk. So when the market goes up and down, if you ever watched the Dow or one of those TV shows, CNN Money or something like that, and you see the tickers going up and down, that's market risk. Another one is, I talked about earlier, liquidity risk. How easily can you take what you have converted your cash into and convert it back into cash? Sometimes the market goes away and you can't sell what you have. And so that's the liquidity risk. And then interest rate risk is a really common one as well, where if you have your money tied up for a long, long period of time at a poor interest rate and something happens in the market where you could have earned a better interest rate, you can't take advantage of it. So those are some of the common risks when we start thinking about different types of securities. You need to understand the risks that you're taking, not only when you purchase something and how you're going to make money, but how you can lose money. And to help you in that, I highly recommend talking to a financial advisor. I am not one. I don't have the certifications to do that. I can't give you investment advice. If you take what I say, you're taking it at your own risk. But a financial advisor is certified to do those things. They are smart. We use one. They help you a ton. Proverbs 13, verses 13 and 14 say, "The one who despises instruction will pay the penalty, but whoever esteems instruction will be rewarded. Instruction from the wise is like a life-giving fountain to turn a person from deadly snares." And so that's my take on financial advisors. They are people that know better than you do and help keep emotion and other things out of your investment decisions. All right. So talking about securities. First one that we can talk about is a stock. And so this is a pretty common type of security. A stock is a portion of a company. Okay, it's one piece of a company. Its value is tied to the underlying value of that company. So if the company is more valuable, your stock's more valuable. If your company that you have a stock in loses value, you're going to lose some value as well. One of the neat things about stocks, though, is that you don't actually gain money or lose money until you sell it. So even if there's all sorts of market fluctuations going along, you're okay. All right? This buy low, sell high mentality is what you need to have when you're investing in stocks. You want to look for things that are at a discount so that you can buy them, and hopefully they increase in value so that you can sell them when they're valued higher. Anybody remember Bitcoin? So Bitcoin, back in December of 2017, it was going gangbusters. It was selling at $20,000 almost per Bitcoin. All right? There was so much news about it. Everybody was talking about it. It was the cool thing to invest in. It was a stupid time to invest in it, though. I had a buddy that invested in it at that time because everybody was talking about it. Today, it's worth $5,800. So he took a little bit of a bath on that one. All right, so just to exemplify the fact that there are emotions in investing, and you have to be aware of that. Sometimes it's the best time to buy when the market bottoms out. Things are at a discount. They're on sale. You wouldn't buy a pair of jeans if they were charging a premium for it. So you wait until they go on sale. Bonds. Bonds represent debt obligations, or an IOU, by the corporation or government that supplies them. So many of us have probably gotten from grandma a savings bond at some point in time. And you have to wait a couple years or 10 years or however many years for it to mature. When it matures, you get the money paid back that grandma had loaned to the government plus interest. Okay? And that's how a bond works. Interest rates are generally pretty low. I think a treasury bond right now is somewhere in the 3% range. So you're not going to make a ton of money on these, but they are relatively safe, especially if you go with the government debt backing. Mutual funds. Mutual funds are one of my favorites. Mutual funds are a group of stocks all pulled together. Okay? So the benefit of a mutual fund is that there's this natural diversification that's included because they're taking stocks from all different types of industries, all different types of businesses, and lumping them all together. They're professionally managed, and you need a financial advisor or a broker at least to get into them, unless you want to go down the E-Trade route. So a mutual fund example, we'll do a simplified one. Let's say you have two stocks in your mutual fund. You have a snow shovel company, and you have a sunscreen company. All right? So let's say then that December ended up being 85 degrees and sunny. Normally, what you would think is that your snow shovel company would be doing all right during December, but in this scenario, it probably tanked. However, the offset of the sunscreen company helped cancel out some of that lost value by what should be their increase in value. So that's an example of what one thing that mutual funds are really good for, and that's diversification. Annuities. Okay, there's three types of annuities. Actually, there's probably more. Three that we're going to talk about: fixed, fixed indexed, and variable. In essence, all an annuity is a contract between you and an insurance company. You give them either a lump sum of money or a certain amount of payments, and what they do is they guarantee that you're going to get a certain stream of payments for the time that you determined, or a lump sum at a point in time, or they're going to guarantee the return, or they're going to guarantee that your primary investment isn't going to lose value. In short, they make a guarantee. So annuities, while expensive because it's when you give your money over to the insurance company, they're investing it in mutual funds. But on top of that, they're also saying, we're going to invest this, and if you want to guarantee this payment stream, you're going to have to pay us a little bit extra. And so they can be a very secure way to guarantee lifetime income, for example. Okay, that was the heady part of all of this. Everybody still with me? Okay, all right. Now we'll get on to how you actually apply some of these tools that we just talked about. We're going to talk about short-term, mid-term, and long-term investing. And we're going to start with short-term. And for the sake of this discussion, short-term is going to be anything under 5 years. Good examples of things under 5 years, well, your emergency fund. Pastor was talking about that a little bit earlier. Generally, when you're saving for the short term, you're going to want to be using a savings account, a CD, or a money market account. And that is because you need to have the liquidity, so be able to actually access your cash quickly. And also, you don't want it exposed to all that market volatility that could happen in a short term. The markets perform very, very well on a long-term perspective. Short-term chunks, maybe not so much. And so that's why we would want to use something that's safer for the short term. All right, $1,000 emergency fund is the first example that we're going to show here. You need to have an urgency about getting it. I completely echo what Pastor said. If you haven't done it yet, do something, please. Don't be 23-year-old Shaun sitting with $20 a month between you and life. Sell something, get a second job for a little bit, ask for more hours at work, anything that you can do in order to put a buffer between you and life. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 39% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 expense without turning to credit. That's why it is so important to have this buffer between you and life. There's, I've been in this situation before where you might be thinking, gosh, you know what, it's tough to raise that amount of money. But like we said last week, you can do it. God's going to help. And he already has, because he gave you a pastor who gave you 3 great ideas last week, or 2 weeks ago. All right, the first one, pastor suggested cutting cable. All right, going cold turkey. I'm not going to be quite as draconian as that. I'm going to say, let's cut cable, but let's get a standard Netflix subscription, and let's buy an Apple TV. Okay, so you can take advantage of some of that streaming content that comes through there. If you go to that next slide, please. A 1-year cable subscription costs just under $1,100 a month. A 1-year standard Netflix subscription costs just under $100 a month. A year. $1,100 a year, and then just under $100 a year. An Apple TV is a one-time fixed cost of about $160. So if you do this over the course of a year, you'll save $826 in the first year. Over the course of the next year and every year thereafter, because you're not buying an Apple TV every single year, you're going to save a lot closer to $1,000. Pretty simple, right? All right. Another way that you can save $1,000 real quick. If you go to the second slide, pastor suggested switching from Starbucks to Folgers. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, okay? I don't like Folgers. Can't stand it. He's not doing that. Well, and here's the thing. I'm going to say, don't buy it from the Starbucks drive-thru or from the Starbucks store. Buy it from Kroger. Get your 20-ounce bag of Starbucks coffee, okay, and brew it yourself. A 20-ounce bag of Starbucks coffee will allow you to drink 6 cups of coffee a day for a week. That's an insane amount of coffee that you can replace your 1 latte with, all right? So I know, because my wife loves them, that a grande vanilla latte from Starbucks is $4.61. If you drink one of those every single day, you will end up spending $1,683 a year. That 20-ounce bag of coffee is just under $12. So the annual cost of that bag of coffee is $605. I'm going to be really nice and allow you to get a super good coffee maker tube to keep up with that insane amount of brewing that you're going to be doing. And you're going to drop $200 on that coffee maker. So, first year savings, $876. Every year thereafter, $1,100. All right, that's another way to save $1,000. Next example, replacing one lunch meal per week, okay, and cutting out one pop a day. All right, so if you eat one meal out per week at about $12 a pop here, your total cost is $624 for that lunch. One pop per day costs about $770 every year. So your total expenses are just under $1,400 for those two items. Now, I like cold water, so I'm going to let you buy a Yeti, a 20-ounce Yeti, so that you can keep your water cold. Water is pretty much free. Your Yeti costs just under $32. And then if you eat peanut butter and jelly, 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches a day, for that time period, your annual cost of peanut butter and jelly to replace that one lunch meal is $344. So if you do those two things, you can save another $1,000. Now if you go to the next slide, if you did all 3 of those things for a year, you save just over $3,000. Say you don't like this. Say you don't want to cut out that much coffee or that much cable. Do all these things for 4 months, and you've saved yourself $1,000. All right, then you can go back. But put a pin in that $3,000 amount because we're gonna revisit that in a few minutes. But that's exciting to me. You can make these lifestyle changes. And also, I did all these. To get myself out of that hole, I've done that. We still don't have cable, quite honestly. We have a Netflix subscription, but we don't have cable. All right, what else for short-term savings? Cars. Cars are something else that people save for in the short term. Did you know that you can pay cash for a car? They will actually take a check. Yeah, it's amazing. There is a sustainable way to never have to get another car loan. Now, it's going to involve some patience. It's going to involve driving a car that you might not like very much for a little bit longer than you really want to be driving it. But it's also going to involve paying yourself that payment, okay? If you go to the next slide, one note here, the average value of a car that your millionaire next door drives is just under $25,000, okay? So they might know a thing or two about that. It's a used vehicle. I forget what the actual statistics are on it, but it's like between 2 and 4 years old or something along those lines. But that's what millionaires drive on average. The way this works is you take the car value that you have and you pay yourself and you save up for, in essence, more car for a period of time. For this example, I used 24 months. If you pay yourself $300 a month because that's the value of the payment that you wanted to have to get that $24,000 car right away, you can change in that savings plus your current car to get the next car. It's not the one that you want to be driving yet, but it's one that you can afford for cash. Then you repeat that several times over, and by the time 8 years have passed, you can continually pay cash for a car. Or you can sit on that $24,800 car, which can probably last for 5 to 10 years, and continue to save that money. Christmas, birthdays, and anniversaries. They all happen the same day every single year. It's amazing. So just having a little bit of forethought and planning for it. My dad, who was in the first service, he was telling me a story about somebody at his work who he says that she seems surprised that Christmas is on the 25th every single year. And it's like, and you shouldn't be caught off guard by that, right? And so it's just that little bit of planning ahead that can help you save for things that you know you're going to have to spend money on. All right. Now, all this is fantastic in theory, right? But the only way this works, the only way that you're actually going to save money, especially when we're talking about those 3 ways to get to $1,000, the only way it really works is if you put the money in your pocket, right? Or if you put it into a savings account. If you take that $4.61 for the grande vanilla latte and actually put it into the bank, give it a name, all right? That's the only way this works, is you have to be diligent about your savings, doing it every single day. Proverbs 10:4-5 says, "The one who is lazy becomes poor, but the one who works diligently becomes wealthy." And Proverbs 13:11 says, "Wealth gained quickly will dwindle away, but the one who gathers it little by little will become rich." So, while you might only be saving a few dollars a day, it really adds up if you do it consistently. So, we need to change this mantra of living paycheck to paycheck that the majority of Americans do to saving from paycheck to paycheck. Okay, medium-term savings. So for instances of this discussion, this is going to be things between 5 and 15 years out. We use, so when you're starting to look at medium-term investments, you're going to start looking at things that do have market risks associated with them. So this is where you're going to want to get a financial planner on board that can help you set out your goals and help you understand what the right product mix is going to be. But this is going to be where you're investing in mutual funds or stocks and bonds or some combination thereof to try and generate additional wealth for these longer-term expenses that you're going to incur. Also, there's going to be specific products for things that you save for in that medium term. Things like college savings plans. You can go out and get a 529 plan and other investment vehicles that are specifically for some of these medium-term savings items. Other things that Katie and I that we save for. So we have college for the kids. We have a new roof that we know that we're going to need eventually. So we start saving for that. And we use something we call a sinking fund. All right? We only have one investment account. And we put money towards those three things into it on a consistent basis. And then once that expense comes up, we take the money out of there, or we sink the fund for it and pay for the expense. Why do we only have one investment account for this? Because investment accounts actually cost money. There's fees that are involved in opening and maintaining those types of accounts. So we try to, this is just our personal preference, we just try to limit it and keep it simple and keep multiple expenses in one account. Does that make sense? Is that all right? Okay. Long-term savings. This is my favorite part because we start talking about retirement. That's something I am very much looking forward to. It is something that's really fun to sit back and just dream about. Like, what are you going to do after you retire, after you have all this time? You go from having 8 hours of free time a day, because you got to sleep for 8 and you work for 8, to 16 hours of free time a day. That's a massive switch. So Katie and I, my wife, we like to think about that and talk about that and think about that. So retirement to me is very, very exciting. When you start thinking about retirement and long-term savings, this concept of time really comes into play. And time's really cool because it allows you to make more money. If you have more time, you can make more money. Time allows you to fix mistakes of your youth, like my 23-year-old self. And time also gives us the opportunity to accumulate wealth, the time value of money. However, to our own disservice, time is often used as an excuse. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't have to save for retirement yet. That's a long way away. You know what? I'm going to buy this now because I can just make the payments over time. Now, I don't want to be negative or scary, but you don't have time when we're talking about saving for retirement. The earlier you can start, the better off you're going to be. We're going to walk through a couple examples here in a second. But also, I want to give my little warning, buckle in. This next piece is not for the faint of heart when we start talking about retirement. Currently in the United States, there is a retirement gap. The difference between the amount that people have saved and the amount that people will need to live in retirement is estimated to be between 6.8 and 14 trillion dollars. The national debt, as of February, that we have accumulated as a nation since 1776 is only $22 trillion. That's a big number. It's a huge number. But it gets worse. 48% of U.S. households aged 55 and older, so those that are 10 years away from retirement, have zero saved. 42% of all Americans are not saving for retirement. Of those that are, half have less than $10,000. 76% of boomers are not confident they've saved enough, and nearly the same amount wish they would have started sooner. The most common age for retirement is 62, but that's not by choice. 80% of people want to work in retirement, but historically 28% can. That's often due to a loss of job because of health matters or illness. Then there's Social Security. If left to the same devices, it will need to cut its benefit by 23% by the year 2034. Pretty happy thoughts, huh? All right. Boomers right now, one of their biggest fears for retirement is that they become a burden on their families. However, boomers are currently spending 2 times as much on adult children's expenses than they are saving for their own retirement. And so they start entering into the circle of self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, this wouldn't be insurmountable, except there's another set of facts too that's very alarming. 5,000 years ago, life expectancy was 18. If you made it to 18, you had done a good job, lived a long life. When retirement concepts were really introduced in 1900, somewhere over in Europe, I forget where exactly, the average age, people lived on average to 47. And that's what our retirement thought process is still built on today, where people right now are living to 79 on average. Children born today in 2019 are expected to live between 104 and 120 years. So what's that all mean? It means we haven't saved enough, and we also have a lot longer time that we're going to need our money. So that's where that $6.8 to $14 trillion deficit comes into play. If you can save for retirement, you need to start now. And at a very minimum, you need to start thinking about it and talking about it. Genesis 41, verses 35 and 36 say, "They should gather all the excess food during these good years that are coming. By Pharaoh's authority, they should store up grain, so the cities will have food, and they should preserve it. This food should be held in storage for the land in preparation for the 7 years of famine that will occur throughout the land of Egypt. In this way, the land will survive the famine." So think about that in context of your retirement. Save now while you have income coming in, so that when your income is cut off, you have something to pull from. All right, so that's kind of the downer side, or downer portion of this. Let's talk about how we can actually build wealth in retirement. 2 of the main ways that you can do this are things called a 401k or a 403b. These are retirement plans that are offered through an employer or through your job. Basically, what a 401k or 403b is a collection of mutual funds that you get to choose from and invest into. So I work for Jackson National Life. They offer us like 20 different mutual funds that we can invest in. I've picked 5 because of my own research and risk tolerances that I like, and that's where my contributions go. If you're fortunate to have an employer that does a match, so basically they'll throw in money on top of yours, up to a certain amount, they will throw it into that 401k and 403b in proportion to what you've done, or in the same areas to what you've selected. Millennials, I know I've talked a lot about boomers. Millennials are very, very guilty of not taking advantage of that free money. I forget what the actual statistic is off the top of my head, but it's more than 50% of millennials do not take advantage of the free money that is given to them in the matching funds for their 401ks or 403bs. So, any millennials out there, please start doing that if you're not. All right, an IRA. So an individual retirement account is just like a 401k or 403b, except that it's run through a financial institution and not your employer. It's basically the same exact thing. You can actually have an IRA and a 401k, and you can contribute to both of them. Then there's this term Roth that some of you may have heard. So a Roth 401k or a Roth 403b, a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA. And so Roth really is talking about the tax implications of it. It's when your money is taxed. So if you have a Roth 401k, what that means is that I'm going to put my money in right now, and they're going to tax it up front. So I get to put a little bit less in, but 30 years down the line when I retire, I get to take out all that money tax-free. Pretty cool deal. And that's something that's a huge benefit for most people. Conversely, if I'm in a non-Roth IRA, I put my money in, I put a greater amount in because it hasn't been taxed, and it grows over the course of the 30 years. But when I take out my distributions, they are taxed at my tax rate then. And so it's really this game of what's my tax rate going to be in 30 years versus what is it today. So these retirement vehicles are super powerful in building wealth from a long term. I'm going to throw up a slide right here. Remember that $3,000 I told you to put a pin in for a second that we saved up by cutting those 3 different expense types? Well, imagine a scenario where you invest that $3,000 every single year for 3 years, or for 30 years, at average market rates. So the S&P returns between 8 and 12% on average over the life. Yes, there's down years. Yes, there's up years. This year happens to be an up year. I think it's up near 19% right now, which is fantastic. But we're going to use the average, 8%. If you invest that $3,000 a year over 30 years, you will have almost $360,000, even though you only put in $90,000. So this is kind of the magic of compound interest. When you start earning interest on your interest on your interest, and your money is working for you. Pretty cool, right? I think $360,000 is worth giving up cable, some store-bought coffee, and eating some peanut butter and jelly for a little bit. I do. All right, let's look at the second example I have. So I did some research. Here in Lansing, Michigan, the average family has approximately $1,527 a month worth of debt payments, not including the mortgage. That's just cars, education, and credit cards. So let's imagine a scenario where you're debt-free and you're able to put that $1,527 every single month into a 401k or a mutual fund. What happens? After 30 years, you have $2.2 million. Now that's some money. Yeah? That's some family tree money right there. All right, now this is my favorite example. Let's imagine that we're debt-free. And let's imagine that we're contributing 15% of our income into a 401k. 15 to 20% is what a financial advisor will tell you that you should be contributing to your 401k to have to live at the same means that you were during your working years. And your employer matches 3% of your income. If you do that, I don't think the slide's in there. No? Okay. You get $3.6 million. What can $3.6 million do for you? Well, if you plan on living an additional 25 years after you retire and you wanted to have nothing left, you could have an income of $202,000 a year with no debt. That's some big dollars. Okay? So, when we're thinking about long-term saving and specifically retirement, there's 2 main points to consider. First is the value of diversification. Investing in savings vehicles that spread the risk across multiple investments. Ecclesiastes 11:1 says, "Send your grain overseas, for after many days you will get a return. Divide your merchandise among 7 or 8 investments, for you do not know what calamity may happen on earth." The second thing is the value of early savings. Get time on your side. The more time that you have, the longer your money has to work for you. Save early, save often. We've covered a ton of information about retirement and about savings and about different investment vehicles. And I bet there's probably people thinking, you know what? I can't do anything that you just said. It's so hard just getting through the week. How can I possibly think about 30 years down the line. And I have been there. I have been there. 60% of Americans feel stress about their financial situation. 56% lose sleep when they think about retirement. But even if you don't think you can have anything to invest right now, I'm here to tell you there's still something that you can do. You can invest in your own health. Today, a couple that retires at age 65 can expect to spend $285,000 over the course of their retirement in healthcare costs, not including long-term care. So remember that example I mentioned about cutting 1 pop a day out of your diet? Hey, Josh, could you come here for a sec? If you cut 1 pop a day from your diet, not only are you going to be saving money, but, let me grab something from back here. I'm ready this time. But you're also going to cut, let's see, that's a 15, 30, 35. 45, 55 pounds of sugar from your diet every single year. 1 pop per day. Okay? Sugar has been linked to all sorts of different chronic diseases, diabetes, obesity, and heart disease.
You want to speed it up?
Yeah, I'm working on it. So, another thing, if you're eating an already balanced diet, this amount of sugar converts, here, I'll just leave you with that one, to 15 pounds of body weight every single year. 1 pop a day. So if you can't do anything from a financial perspective, invest in your health. Do something. Just like putting that $4.61 a day away, a push-up, a walk around the block, anything like that can help and add up. And at the very end of the day, just like savings, your health can help lead you to a more fulfilling and longer life. That's all I have.